here we are, back at the Church of the Muzzle Flash. You're probably wondering where we're located. We're located down here in the great state of Florida on the west coast. We're about 25 miles south of Sarasota, Florida. We're in a little community called Warm Mineral Springs, which is just north of another little town called Northport, Florida. And the Warm Mineral Springs has been here, well, ever since Florida was actually discovered, because the Warm Mineral Springs is the purported fountain of youth that Ponce de Leon searched for, coming here all the way from Spain back in the 1500s. The first question we need to ask is, how did Ponce de Leon, in the days before they had maps, know about this place? But that's another question. We'll get into that later. As we've told you, what we deal with here at the Church of the Muzzle Flash is truth, questions that are asked about truth, and things that are of significance, which the establishment tends to try and overlook. Now, to give you an idea exactly where we're located, got a map here of the state of Florida. As you can see, we're a peninsula. Here's the top of the state. Here's the bottom of the state. Here's the east coast. Here's the west coast. And we're located right here, about 3 miles to the north of Northport. Now, we call Northport the city with no port because Northport has no port. And it was named Northport to give the people that were buying property back in the 1950s and 1960s the impression that we were on the Gulf of Mexico. Actually, there's no port here. It was named for Northport, Charlotte. The people that worked for a company called General Development Corporation were not very creative, so they took the name of Northport, Charlotte, and they called it Northport. We at the Warm Mineral Springs have been talking for a long time of the need of changing the name of Northport to the Warm Mineral Springs because of all of the adverse connotations that are associated with the city of Northport. In 1990, the federal government indicted the executives of General Development Corporation. They were convicted and sent to prison. And this was the biggest land fraud that was perpetrated in North America up until that time. Since then, we've had a wide variety of things which have established the notoriety of the city with Northport. One of them being it was one of the speed traps that the Automobile Club said was the worst in the country, and it maintained that identity up until 3 or 4 years ago, when they got the revenuers off the Interstate 75, and of course this put a significant crimp in the city of Northport's revenue. But they were able to make up for that by selling all of this swampland to Northerners as marketable and habitable property. Now, I can go on about this for forever, but that's not the reason for us putting together this presentation. It seems here in Northport we've got some things of real interest that are of scientific value, and whether they're valid or not, I don't know. Now, what we do here is we report news. This is kind of like Alex Jones. This isn't supposition or anything. We take material that's given to us from the news, we report on it, and we ask that you, in your what shall we say, your ability to be able to differentiate what's real isn't real, to look at this and say, well, I either know or I don't know. Now, we have 2 newspapers here in the city with no port. We have the Northport Sun, and we've got the Herald Tribune, the Sarasota Herald Tribune. And the Sarasota Herald Tribune is owned by the New York Times, which prints all the news that fits, not necessarily all the news that's fit to print. And consequently, everything that we get here is very jaundiced from that aspect of journalism. And here in the city itself, we have the Northport Sun. Now, on August 3rd, the Northport Sun reported in a feature article that we had been invaded by gray aliens. Now, we've got a lot of problems here in Northport with aliens, but up until this time, they aren't this kind of aliens, the gray aliens. The aliens we have here are the illegal aliens that are coming here from all over the world in order to be able to take advantage of all of the services and things that we provide for people that are not residents of the United States. On August 3rd, a gentleman by the name of Michael Rowley came to the Northport Sun and reported that he had aliens running around his property. And the editor of the Northport Sun took this as being fact, and they published an article, much to the dismay of the citizens here, explaining that this was something that was not only of scientific notoriety, but something that needed to be noted. Now, Mr. Rowley called MUFON, which is the Mutual UFO Network, which is the investigatory arm of the United States Air Force. And they came in and they investigated and assigned a case number, 17015. They came, they talked to Mr. Rowley, they said whatever they needed to say, they conducted their investigation, and on August 9th, Bland Hugh, the state director of MUFON, closed the case saying it had no justification. That being said, on August 17th, another feature article was put out with the Northport Sun, this one including photos. Now, whether these were photos that came out of the archives of the newspaper or whether these were actual photos that Mr. Rowley had taken, showing ships, and Mr. Rowley had also taken plaster casts of the footprints of these grays that supposedly were chasing him, and I shouldn't say chasing, harassing him and his son here in Northport. Needless to say, the residents were very much taken aback by all this, because the last thing we need here is more bad publicity in the community. Number one, this is where the housing market collapsed. The land here is a sheet wash floodplain. General Development filled enough of it in with fill so that they could get it up high enough above sea level in order to be able to sell the property to people that didn't know any better. And now we've got a terrific amount of dissent amongst the population here for the simple reason that their property floods. And all of this is a matter of record. There were photographs in the Northport Sun showing this. And in fact, the Northport Sun's office almost washed away because of the poor engineering that Sarasota County and the city has put together. As I said, I believe on the 17th, another article appeared, and this time we were informed that these grays were coming in. They usually came in 2 or 3 days before the full moon and 2 or 3 days after the full moon. And Mr. Rowley was requesting that if anybody had any information or had any interest in what was going on there, that if they were to contact www.northportdevil.com, he would be happy to supply them with information, sell them t-shirts or plastic casts of the footprints of the grays. Now, the Church of the Muzzle Flash looks upon this with great skepticism, but because of what has already transpired here at the Warm Mineral Springs, we always want to leave the door open for new information. Because, you see, the Fountain of Youth is the Warm Mineral Springs, and Ponce de Leon landed down in Punta Gorda, Florida, and a state and federal historic marker designate the place of his landing in Punta Gorda, and a Sarasota County historical marker sits in front of the Warm Mineral Springs, explaining the same thing. Now, if we had people coming here from Europe that didn't have any maps, who are we to say that we don't have aliens coming here to visit, perhaps for the Warm Mineral Springs?